Hey everybody, this is Brian here, and we're going to be talking about Fire Pro Wrestling World on the PlayStation 4, doing a game review today. And I hope you guys are having a good holiday season. And it's nearly New Year's, and I'm excited, extra excited today. So let's get to it. This is one of my favorite games that I've played in a really long time. It's got a timing based grappling system. You kind of walk your characters towards each other, and whoever hits the button first kind of hits their move, so to speak. Um, that's the main that's the main difference between it and the WWE, like the older games like the Button Mashers, or the games that kind of branch out from that Aki wrestling game system that came out in the Nintendo 64 era. You know, this game has more of a timing based system, and it kind of works on small, medium, and large grapples, but it's kind of the procession of the grapples in the sense that you really have to build your moves from things like scoop slams and snapmares all the way up to your finishers and signatures, or else you're going to get your ass whipped royally, because the computer will just counter you unless you have it on like difficulty level 1 or something. Um, but yeah, that timing based system is the main difference between Fire Pro World. I have a physical copy of it right here. As you can see, it's got Japanese wrestlers on the front. This is mostly based on the New Japan Pro Wrestling Company. They actually got the license to actually have some of New Japan's talents in here. Usually, Fire Pro Wrestling, throughout the history of their games, have had facsimiles of real life wrestlers for copyright reasons. They've had it so pretty much, because they couldn't have the likenesses of those guys, so they didn't get sued. They kind of changed the colors of their outfits a little bit and changed the names a syllable or two. They'd have Sting be like Stain or something like that. And they'd have him have like orange face paint and short hair or something. But you could still tell who it was, and you could tell from his finisher who it was supposed to be. And this game carries on that tradition. But one difference between Fire Pro Returns, the previous game in the series to come out in English in 2007, and the previous one that I'd played, the big difference between that game and this one is really the fact that this is a licensed game, and that wasn't a licensed game. That was kind of like an indie wrestling game that had almost like a Legends roster of facsimiles of people, even legendary female wrestlers. They had everybody. They didn't have like WWE talents like Triple H or anything like that. But I think that one of the big differences is this game, rather, rather than starting you out with about 350 wrestlers who are likenesses of real life people, this game starts you out with about 50 wrestlers who actually are real life people. It starts you out with the actual real life New Japan talent. Depending on which version of the game you get, you may actually have to get that as DLC. But now that the game's been out a while, I think it should be okay. I think that you should be able to. I have the day one edition, but I've heard some people complain that on the computer version, and if they like downloaded the game, different versions of the game, they've had issues getting the New Japan character DLC from, and they've actually had to purchase it. Um, so I think that this game really, one of the big things about it, aside from the grappling system and its lengthy history, and the fact that it's been on just about every console, from the Sega Genesis and the PS2 all the way to the PlayStation 4, and on mobile game releases too. I'm not really counting those in that lengthy go throwback to the 80s. I'm really more just saying that this game has one of the richest histories, and one of the most realistic histories of any wrestling game ever. So yeah, that aside from their collaboration with New Japan Pro Wrestling, one of the main differences between this and the Fire Pro Wrestling games of the past is that aside from aside from not having to like mod your memory card and stuff, or USB import like a actual like downloaded emulator packs of like if you will, like the kind of thing like it. Have you ever played an emulator and you've gotten like Project 64 or something, and you've gotten like a No Mercy mod or something, so it's got ECW wrestlers on it? You could do the same thing with Fire Pro Returns, basically. Uh, kind of, I think, USB importing those things. But one of the interesting things about this game, aside from the fact that it's actually licensed and it doesn't have a large roster of fake wrestlers, but a real roster of real wrestlers, which is sounds kind of weird coming out. It sounds weird when you actually word it that way. Um, but one of the other different things about this game that I think is that you can download wrestlers. There wasn't really a community creations thing on the Game Boy Advance version or on the PlayStation 2 version. So you couldn't just go on there and if you didn't feel like if you didn't feel like creating all those wrestlers yourself, because it takes hours and hours with a system this in depth, then you could actually just get them off of there. And like I said previously, this game has one of the most dedicated fan communities of any video gaming community. Like it's up there with like the Halo people and the Star Trek people and the Star Wars people. It's a smaller community, obviously. It's a cult series, but this game you can pretty much find any wrestler who's ever existed, even jobbers, complete jobbers, even jobbers from the mid 80s. It's really crazy how in depth. I think some people just really actually went to like Wikipedia and they tried to find every wrestler who's ever like worked for WWE or has held like the hardcore title, or just pretty much everyone who's ever lived, and they've tried to see if they can't make them, because you have 1,000 cost spots in this game, or edit slots as they call them in game. So you can actually make uh, wrestlers, rings, referees. Um, there's not like a arena creator or anything like that, but you don't really need one because there's a couple different arenas as is. And the cool thing is that the ability to create those things doesn't factor into your space of saved wrestlers. Not that I think anyone with a life would really ever need 1,000 spots in terms. Is there 1,000 wrestlers that? Could you name 1,000 wrestlers? I don't think I could. Um, but yeah, this is the first game in the series to come out in quite a few years. I think that this is probably going to, since it's sold well and it got good reviews, I hope that they start releasing games in English a little bit more often. Um, I don't know why they've been so hesitant, considering that these games have been popular. Um, Maybe not popularly selling, but these games have been well received, I guess I should say, since they were first released back in the 2D era, and they're still in the 2D era now, I guess. But yeah, it's kind of interesting to see that a 3D game like 2K 2020, um, it has horrible gameplay and a large roster, whereas this game has a small roster and primitive graphics, but it works well, and you can make anyone you want. You can download anyone you want, and the fact that I was mentioning the fan community being so dedicated, what I really was trying to get at by that is that they pretty much have the best fan community creations site on the internet of any game ever, pretty much, that I could think of, any game that I've ever played at least. It's really cool. I pretty much sat down and got like 150 wrestlers day one, and you can find multiple versions of people. Some have AI based on earlier, younger versions of their career, like face paint, blonde hair version of Sting, or an NWO Wolfpack Sting or something. Um, Yeah, I almost said NWA like the rap group. That's not correct. Anyways, it's really cool. I think that this game allows you to make your own world. I think even really to create any dream match you can think of, from even anachronistic ones, and ones that internationally don't make sense. You can put people like Shawn Michaels and Mitsuharu Misawa in an MMA match, or in a crazy death match, like uh, one of those crazy Japanese styles of death matches that they're just practically bloodlettings. Um, anyways, I think that this game has a lengthy and a rich history, and even though the graphics are primitive, you shouldn't let it put you off, so to speak. I think that this game has its own look, and once you get over the fact that it's not a 3D facial scan, you might actually be able to appreciate a few of the benefits of a 2D wrestling game. Here, I'll give you a few. It's easier to make creative wrestlers because you don't have to worry about spending 2 hours trying to create the gap between someone's nostrils, or the bridge on their nose, or which kind of eyebrow hair they have. You pretty much can just actually create a game where, because the faces are not quite blurry, I wouldn't say that by any means. They're well articulated. Um, but if you actually just spend most of the time creating their CPU logic and their move set, and since the face is a teensy bit more obscured, you can create somebody much faster, at least in terms of appearance. The rest of the system is really, really deep and not quick by any means. So, warning, warning, warning. This game takes a long time to create wrestlers, and um, but their appearances aren't as big a pain in the ass as it is in the SmackDown and 2K games, because you don't have to actually uh, waste all of your time um, on really superfluous details, like the uh, whether or not they have dimples, or the size of somebody's ball in their throat. It's things like how many wrinkles they have on their head. You can spend more important. You can spend your minutes invested into more important things, like actually how they're going to wrestle once they are in the ring, and as a result, I think that Fire Pro, one of the coolest things about it is that this series, the guys actually fight like themselves, whether it's someone you downloaded from Community Creations, made yourself, or whether it's somebody who came by default in the game, or whether this game actually does have a few facsimiles of I can't tell who they are because they're not as realistic as the past games that based them off real life wrestlers. These are they have like a guy named Mr. Cobra, and I think they're based off Japanese wrestlers, to be honest with you, because I don't know who they are from America. Maybe that's supposed to be Sergeant Slaughter as Mr. Cobra, or Jake the Snake. I don't know. But yeah, so this game pretty much allows you to create your own fantasy world, and you can even I downloaded Bill Alfonso and Paul Heyman. I downloaded Vince McMahon, not as wrestlers but as referees, and you can download them as wrestlers too if you want. I saw an entire series where someone performed 100 finishers to Brock Lesnar, which is pretty funny. Um, so yeah, this game allows you to create your dream matches and your dream rosters, as many of them as you want, probably, because you could probably create every company that's ever existed, from the WWF to the WWE, to New Japan to AEW. I mean, really, you can go anywhere with this amount of space that you want to, and that's not even bringing up the mod packs that the fan community in this game has made. And one of the cool things is that this game actually has the same hub site for its PS4 game as it does for its PC game. So there's a really deep um, there's a really deep amount of cause for you to uh, mine through and look for gems, so to speak, in terms of looking for ones with four attires and good CPU logic and move sets. Um, you're not just looking at a divided fandom, so to speak. It's not just someone made a bunch of characters for PS4 and then someone made a bunch for the PC, and then they were kind of I don't know, I guess devied up, and as a result you had shittier fan creation community websites based on which console you were on, because it was divided up between the two instead of just having one big centralized hub. I think that that's cool. Anyways, now that I've told you about some of my favorite things about this game, including its gameplay, its depth and create a wrestler, its unique match modes featuring some hardcore matches that you'll only see in Japan, and in some of the past games in the series, you could also uh, get some really unique rosters. I think really no other game in history uh, compares. I mean, WWE's game rosters have gotten bigger in recent years, and sometimes uh, not even including their DLC or not even including your cause. You can get some pretty big and pretty impressive rosters with some good legends in those WWE games. But I think Fire Pro, having literally hundreds of default characters and returns without even needing to create or download anyone. And then moving on to this game, which admittedly does not have as big of a roster, but it does allow you to actually download fan community creations, which is really fucking cool, and is an absolute dream. It's kind of like it's almost like when we were in the early 2000s and everyone had pagers and PDFs, and then the first guy came out with a flip phone, and everyone was all amazed by it. It's like everyone has an iPhone now, but it's like it kind of feels that way to me, in the sense that you can really do anything you want in here. And I think that yeah. But now I'll tell you a little bit about why I think that this game could do things better. One big thing is collision detection, strikes. There's grapples and strikes and taunts and a couple of other core things in wrestling games. But really, I think this game's collision detection sucks balls, and so does its menu system. Its menu system is convoluted, poorly translated. At times, even when you're in like the create a move set thing, like I found the Falcon Arrow, which is a sit out vertical suplex pile driver. In the I found that in the no, it's actually a sit out vertical suplex, not a pile driver, but it's like a vertical suplex slam almost. And I found that in the section of the game where it was like where the screwdriver should be, like Kenta Kobashi's move. Um, but anyways, yeah, there's issues like that. There's things in this game that are not translated. Like there's a word in the Create a Wrestler mode called Yukimi, which I really don't know what that means. I think it means like your wrestler's ability to sell moves, like their stage presence, so to speak. Um, yeah, I think that collision detection is one of the worst things in this game, though. The menus, you could survive after you learn to read through them a little bit, and you'll know where everything is kind of by experience. I think that one of the big problems, though, is that it doesn't just affect standing strikes. It also affects um, it affects the fact that when you're Irish whipping somebody, or when you're coming back from an Irish whip, it makes it so you have to be lined up perfectly in order to hit them with like a like pretend your wrestler's finisher is a super kick. That's really irritating because then you're going to have to line them up perfectly to hit your finisher. And I think that that's super annoying because it makes it so you pretty much are grappling most of this game and reversing grapples. You know, you keep walking your guys into each other, and it begins to feel um, like this game isn't emulating the other elements of wrestling, such as the ability to throw strikes. It emulates mat wrestling and grapples very well, but things like turnbuckle grappling, you know, like over in the corner, um, the inability to remove the pads from the actual corners when you don't have that kind of Japanese like foamy looking turnbuckle pad. When you actually have the American turnbuckle pads on there, you still can't remove them. And when everyone gets thrown out of the ring, like they kind of phase through the ropes, there's just little issues like that where you think because this game is still two dimensional that they could kind of improve those things, not having worked on the graphics over the last 20 plus years, you know. I think that it's kind of, I don't want to say that they're riding on their reputation because this game is a cult series and doesn't really have a huge, wide and notorious reputation. You know, this is more of a cult series, like I've said several times. But I still feel like they're counting on the fact that people will buy it a little bit too much, and as a result, they haven't added enough modes, like a general manager mode, for example. It's mostly, it feels like you're creating wrestlers and just putting them in exhibition matches. And it's cool to change the rules a couple different times, and it's cool to, you know, recreate Survivor Series tag matches in hardcore stipulations and stuff like that, you know. But I think that overall, Fire Pro World, while it's a great game, and I agree that it should have gotten positive reviews like it did, it could have not trapped so many things behind a paywall of DLC when it first came out. It took a while to make certain things available. Other things it kept behind that paywall, and it included a smaller roster, which um, based on the fact that they had over 325 guys, I think, in a PS2 game, you know, men, women, they had legends, they had modern guys, like they had AJ Styles in there, for example, as Andy Spirals or something. Um, eh, you know, just things like that. They changed their name slightly and they maybe changed the color of their hair or their pants a little bit. Um, but considering that they were able to do that on the PS2, um, it makes me wonder why do we need such a shallow roster on a PS4 game? I mean, certainly that has more technical capabilities. You know, it kind of reminds me of that big controversy that they got into in the Pokemon game, where everybody was talking about Dexit, you know, the whole thing about them not including every Pokemon ever made in the updated consoles games for the Nintendo Switch. You know, it's like they were all on the 3DS, so why not on the new console? If the old one can handle it, why can't the new one? And that's basically what I'm saying for this game system. I think that the collision detection could have been better. The menus um, throughout the series history, not only could they have been translated better in prior games, but they could have also actually, I think, made these menus a little bit easier to read through. Some of them take you to places that don't make any sense. You know, like when I was trying to figure out how to delete a wrestler who I didn't want on my roster anymore, it was really, really stupid because it's like I had to go into like the community creations menu to figure out how to uninstall or delete something. And they make it kind of hard to edit wrestlers that you've downloaded, which I really don't think is necessary. I mean, I think that you know, they could have left like a little badge or something on them that so to speak, in order to give credit to the guy who originally made it, so you don't have people stealing other people's work when it comes to making wrestlers. I understand that that's a nice thing to do, to have people get their dues, but I don't think it should have to be such a pain in the ass to have to recreate under a whole new save uh, uh, an edit that you downloaded in order to change moves on them. And sometimes I've actually had to do that, and it's really stupid. I've had to recreate wrestlers, taking out the DLC parts and stuff. That's another annoying part about this game with its paywalls, you know. Um, and you know, there's other quality of life issues that this game could address, such as things like commentary. I'm not really concerned with the 2 or 3D graphics, so I'm not saying that, you know, quality of life issues like that it should look as good as WWE 2K 2020. You know, I'm not expecting that. You know, I don't expect every game to do everything well. You know, this game has probably the best gameplay and create a wrestler mode of any game that I've ever played wrestling wise. And you know, those WWE games, they might have pretty impressive graphics on some guys' entrances, but some of them look absolutely horrible, and the character quality looks really uneven. You know, you can see some of the NXT women's wrestlers that are coming out there with their hair glitching out, and they're coming out there with their faces looking like all you know, deformed and shit, like they've been beaten with a bat or something, and not at all like their real life counterparts, you know. And then you see someone like John Cena or Triple H come out, and they actually come out looking like you can't tell if it's a video or if it's actually a PS4 game or something. I don't know, but it just seems stupid to me that that those games um, those games don't handle the gameplay. Um, they don't handle the graphics evenly. So it's like, what are they doing? If you don't have a game that's the absolute best at character likenesses, at graphics, so to speak, at environments, you know, the WWE games, I can't honestly say are that, because I think that there's games in the past. Hell, I think that I was looking at WWE 2020, and I think I was looking at the TNA game from like 10 years ago, and I think that the WWE game actually looked worse. Um, but this is kind of why I move back towards the central point, that I think that Fire Pro Wrestling World is the best wrestling game that you can get on a modern console. You know, without having to spend $500 to get a get a different area code on your fucking PS4, get a PlayStation 4 or something that fits into the Japanese coding of things. I'm probably not wording any of this right. I'm sorry. Um, but you know what I mean. I'm really just saying that I think this is the best game available on a modern console, and I don't think you should have to go buy a Japanese PS2 off of Amazon in order to actually get returns and get a good game and get one that works, you know. I think that this is the best game to come out in quite a few years. Though the roster is a little shallow to start out with, it actually is pretty good once you get into it. It's got people like Kenny Omega, Hiroshi Tanahashi, and um, it's got a number of their top talent. And I think that another thing that I should bring up is that this game has an awesome story mode called uh, I hope I didn't already bring this up, and I hope I'm not like repeating myself, you know, is what I'm trying to say. But I'll just go over it briefly. Fighting Road, excellent story mode, text based. Kind of reminds me of the old Oregon Trail games in the sense that you name your character. I like to name my characters something funny because I'm immature. Um, but yeah, it's kind of fun to have your character named like Rod Farva after those old stupid movies from the like the 2000s, and then have them be like, "You can do it, Rod. Give it all you got." You know, and just this really immature shit. And it's like, soon I'll be ordering my oats and my oxen and stuff. But anyways, yeah, it reads like a visual novel, and you can name your character something funny, and you can actually interact with, uh, well, they're pictures, but you can interact with likenesses of New Japan talent, real life New Japan talent, and some of the people you'll deal with along the way aren't actual wrestlers, but it's kind of cool how. Well, it's kind of like in the WWE games, how not everyone that you interact with is an actual real life wrestler. Some of the people, especially towards the start of your guy's career, that you deal with, they'll actually be other 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 guys at the bottom of the ladder who aren't a licensing of like John Cena or Triple H or some real life wrestler. But I think that this is really one of the best wrestling games that we've seen in America in years. Maybe since either Fire Pro Returns or since like No Mercy. And it's kind of cool that there's real life wrestlers in this game. It's on the PS4 and the PC. You can download it, like I said. Um, Cult series, so if you haven't heard of it, you're forgiven completely. But yeah, I think that this is a game that more people should know about, and if they did, then maybe we could actually get some more frequent releases around here in America, and this wouldn't have to just be a Christmas present every couple of presidential administrations. Um, so yeah, I'm going to pretty much stop there because I think that's all of the important elements of Fire Pro Wrestling World. Again, you can download it and you can get DLC for it. I wish that it wasn't quite so trapped behind a paywall, so to speak. But there is a really, really cool kind of cheat around that, so to speak, by recreating any of the wrestlers that are grayed out in the main menu. Like if you download a wrestler off Community Creations and you find in exhibition mode that their name is grayed out and you can't use them, the reason for that is either because they have a move that's DLC or they have like a logo or a pair of pants or something that's DLC. So what you need to do if you have anyone grayed out in your game, this happened to me for the first couple days and was super annoying. What you need to do is actually recreate that person like in your own edit menu, like basically create a second save of them and then just move the other one over to retired or delete it or something. Either way, like that. I moved mine to retired because I didn't want to risk deleting the actual modified version that I had. So yeah, basically, if you have a guy who's grayed out because of DLC walls or anything like that, all you need to do is basically recreate them as an original character. I know that sounds weird, but there's other tutorials on YouTube that you can find on how to do that. Basically, what you have to do is go to the edit menu and go to create a wrestler using a model, and then you can pick one of the ones who you've actually downloaded, and you can actually basically use them as the model, and they'll have their logic, moveset, and all that shit. Um, basically, uh, then you can remove all the DLC parts, and it's kind of cool because it'll take out those things that are keeping you from actually utilizing the game without a paywall. And so, yeah, that's pretty neat. I think that was pretty cool because it helped me. Um, the game already has over 1,000 moves pretty much in it, so pretty much I think that you're not really going to need those DLC moves or characters anyways. The cost system is so great that you can just make anyone anyways, and it's like so. I'm just trying to save you a little bit of money here, basically. Just recreate that character as a model and take off the parts that are DLC. A tip is basically that they're usually in the appearance menu, not in the move set menu. If you're looking for which part is actually keeping you from using that character and is graying their name out. If their name is still grayed out after you've created a second CAW version of them, then there might be something that you missed in the appearance mode. Maybe in their alternate attires or something else in that. Try going back to moveset menu. It's either in moveset or appearance, basically. Um, but anyways, thank you for watching my review, my lengthy review on this very, very detailed and very in-depth and rich wrestling game with a long history. And I think that there's a reason that anybody who reviews this game usually will put it in the top 2 or 3 wrestling games, along with things like Here Comes the Pain and No Mercy, you know. And usually the reason people don't like this game is something stupid because they can't get past the 2D graphics. They won't take time to learn the controls, you know. I think that this game really, I wish a couple of cons that I'll give you just because I feel like I've been lavishing praise on it this whole time. You know, one thing that I'll say, aside from the menu system, aside from the fact that I wish that there was a little bit more modes in this game, because there's only a couple different match types. I kind of wish that even if the story mode stayed text-based, that would have a couple more branching options on it. One game that I'll use as an example of what I mean by this is WWF No Mercy for the Nintendo 64. That was a game on a much more primitive console that had a branching text-based story mode using a game with primitive graphics. You know, they were 3D, but that actually means that Fire Pro's graphics are actually more primitive than No Mercy's if you think about it. And that game wasn't for PS4; it was for a Nintendo 64 cartridge. So what I'm trying to say is that game had a branching story mode for every single title in the game. They had a shitload of titles: European Hardcore, the women's title back then, before it was the SmackDown and Raw women's title or the NXT women's title or whatever. Before they had a bunch of different versions of things. I think that that was a game that showed you that you could actually do more. You could do more and not just have the fact that this is a 2D game limit you and hold you down. And they actually do have an expansion pack DLC where you can get like the junior heavyweight title scenario. But I think it's kind of cheap that they don't just include that with the game. It kind of feels like they're making you pay for it because they can. And I think that's stupid. Whereas a much older game with less cartridge space and with better graphics, even, had about 7 or 8 times at least the story mode in there. And it's not like it was a voice acted one or something like that. So these are a few of my complaints and a few of my praises. Please check this game out if you're a wrestling fan. Thanks for watching. I love you guys because you're you, and happy holiday season. Peace out.